Karen reported my cat for scratching trees, so I built it a laser-guarded fortress in the yard. The first time I heard the name Karen, it was shouted through my front door like a battle cry. "Open up. I know you're in there." The voice was shrill, cutting through the quiet Sunday afternoon like a chainsaw through butter. I peeked through the blinds, and there she was, Karen from next door, arms crossed, lips pursed, her blonde bob so stiff it looked like it could deflect bullets. Her eyes burned with the righteous fury of someone who'd just discovered a cause worth dying for. My crime, my cat, Muffin, had scratched the bark off her precious maple tree. Muffin, a scruffy orange tabby with a penchant for chaos, was sprawled on the couch, licking his paw like he hadn't just ignited a neighborhood war. I opened the door, bracing myself. "Karen, what's the problem?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Your cat," she spat, pointing a manicured finger at Muffin, who didn't even flinch, "is a menace. He's been clawing my trees, leaving scratches all over them. I reported him to the HOA, and they're sending someone tomorrow. You'd better keep that beast locked up, or I'll make sure he's taken away." She spun on her heel and marched back to her pristine lawn, leaving me dumbfounded. I shut the door, heart pounding. Muffin yawned, his green eyes glinting with the smug satisfaction of a cat who knew he'd won before the fight even started. The HOA, really? For a cat scratching a tree? This wasn't just Karen being Karen, this was personal. She'd moved in 6 months ago, and since then, she'd been the self-appointed sheriff of Elm Street, policing everything from unmowed lawns to kids riding bikes too fast. But going after Muffin? That was crossing a line. I sank onto the couch, scratching Muffin's chin. "Buddy," I whispered, "we're not letting her win." His purr vibrated through my fingers, a silent agreement. I wasn't just fighting for my cat. I was fighting for every underdog who'd ever been bullied by a clipboard-wielding tyrant. Karen wanted a war. She'd get one. And I'd build Muffin a fortress so epic she'd choke on her own complaints. The next morning, I called in sick to work and got to business. My backyard was a blank canvas, a patchy square of grass with a rickety fence and a single oak tree Muffin loved to nap under. If Karen thought she could scare me into locking him inside, she was about to meet her match. I wasn't just going to protect Muffin. I was going to make a statement. A laser-guarded, cat-proof, Karen-proof fortress. I drove to the hardware store, loading my cart with plywood, chicken wire, motion sensors, and a box of low-powered laser pointers I'd found in the clearance bin. The cashier, a kid with a nose ring and a bored expression, raised an eyebrow. "Building a spaceship or something?" he asked. "Something like that," I said, grinning. "It's for my cat." He snorted. "Coolest cat ever." Back home, I sketched out the plan. The fortress would be a raised platform with a roof to keep out rain, surrounded by a wire mesh fence. The lasers, harmless but intimidating, would activate when motion sensors detected an intruder, creating a dazzling light show to scare off anyone dumb enough to mess with Muffin's domain. I wasn't an engineer, but I'd binge-watched enough sci-fi movies to fake it. Plus, YouTube tutorials were a godsend. By noon, the backyard was a war zone of sawdust and screws. Muffin supervised from the oak tree, occasionally batting at a stray nail like it was a toy. I hammered and drilled, sweat dripping down my back, fueled by spite and a vision of Karen's jaw dropping when she saw my creation. But as the sun climbed higher, doubt crept in. What if the HOA sided with her? What if they fined me? Or worse, demanded Muffin be rehomed? I shook it off, focusing on the whir of the drill. This wasn't just about a cat, Anna Maria. It was about standing up to someone who thought she could control everyone. Around 3 p.m., a shadow fell over the yard. I looked up, expecting Karen, but instead, it was Mr. Delaney, the old widower from across the street. He leaned on his cane, his weathered face creased with amusement. "What in tarnation are you building, Jake?" he asked, eyeing the half-finished fortress. "A safe haven for Muffin," I said, wiping my brow. "Karen reported him for scratching her trees, so I'm making sure he's got his own space." Mr. Delaney chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. "That woman's got a stick so far up her you-know-what, she could fly a flag on it. You know, she tried to get me fined for my rose bushes? Said they were too thorny for the sidewalk." He shook his head. "You're doing right by that cat. Need a hand." I was about to decline. Mr. Delaney was pushing 80 and looked like a strong breeze could knock him over, but his eyes sparkled with a mischief I hadn't expected. "Sure," I said. "You know anything about wiring?" "Son, I was rigging radios in Nam before you were born. Hand me those sensors. And so, Mr. Delaney became my unlikely ally. He moved slowly but with precision, helping me wire the motion sensors to the lasers while regaling me with stories of his army days. His hands shook, but his mind was sharp, and by sunset, we had a functional laser grid. When we tested it, red beams crisscrossed the fortress, flickering like something out of a heist movie. Muffin, curious, leapt onto the platform, and the lasers danced around him, making him look like a furry secret agent. Mr. Delaney clapped me on the back. Karen's gonna lose her mind. That's the plan, I said, grinning. The next day, the HOA inspector arrivated our man in a polo shirt named Greg, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen stood at his side, smug as ever, pointing at the faint claw marks on her maple tree like they were evidence of a felony. I invited them into the backyard, my heart pounding but my face calm. Muffin was lounging in his fortress, unbothered, as the lasers flickered on and off with his movements. Greg's eyes widened. What is this? A secure outdoor space for my cat, I said, gesturing to the fortress. No more tree scratching. Problem solved. Karen's face turned the color of her pink flamingo lawn ornaments. This is absurd, she sputtered. It's an eyesore. It's probably against regulations. Greg scratched his head, flipping through his clipboard. Well, there's nothing in the bylaws about cat fortresses. As long as the cat stays off your property, Miss Thompson, there's no issue. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But it's tacky. And those lasers, they're a safety hazard. They're low-powered, I said smoothly. Safe for pets and people. I checked. Greg shrugged. Looks fine to me. Case closed. He turned to leave, but Karen grabbed his arm. You can't just let this slide, she hissed. This is a neighborhood, not a circus. Greg sighed, clearly done with her. Ma'am, take it up at the next HOA meeting if you want. I've got other calls. He walked off, leaving Karen fuming. I expected her to storm away, but instead, she turned to me, her eyes narrowing. This isn't over, Jake. You think you're clever, but I'll find a way to shut this down. She marched back to her house, her heels clicking like gunfire. Muffin hopped down from the fortress and rubbed against my leg, purring. You're welcome, buddy, I said, but unease settled in my gut. Karen wasn't the type to give up, and something told me this was only the beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Karen's words, her venomous glare. Muffin curled up at the foot of my bed, oblivious to the storm brewing next door. Around 2 a.m., I heard a noise outside, a faint clatter, like metal on wood. I grabbed a flashlight and crept into the backyard, half expecting to find Karen sabotaging the fortress. Instead, I saw a figure hunched near the fence, spray painting something in bold red letters. I flicked on the flashlight, and the figure froze, turning to face me. It wasn't Karen. It was a teenage girl, maybe 16, with dark hair and a guilty expression. The spray paint can hit the ground with a clunk. I'm sorry, she stammered. I didn't mean to. Who are you? I asked, lowering the flashlight. The fortress was untouched, but the fence now bore the words Free Muffin in dripping paint. I'm Lily, she said, her voice trembling. I live down the street. I heard about what Karen did, and I love Muffin. He comes to my yard sometimes, and he's so sweet. I just wanted to, I don't know, support him. I stared at her, torn between annoyance and amusement. By vandalizing my fence. She winced. I know it was stupid. Karen's been awful to everyone. She yelled at my little brother for skateboarding, and she told my mom our garden was unkempt. I thought this would make her mad. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Look, I get it. Karen's a nightmare. But this isn't the way. Help me clean this up, and we'll call it even. Lily nodded, grabbing a rag from my garage. As we scrubbed the paint off, she told me about her life, her parents' divorce, her brother's asthma, how Muffin's visits were the highlight of her day. He just sits there and lets me pet him, she said, smiling. It's like he knows I'm sad. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Muffin wasn't just my calf, was a little piece of joy for people I barely knew. I realized this fight wasn't just about me or Karen. It was about something bigger. Community. Defiance. The right to find happiness in small things, like a cat's purr. By the time we finished cleaning, the sky was lightening. Lily hesitated, then said, Can I help with the fortress? I'm good with tech. I could make the lasers cooler. I laughed, surprised by her enthusiasm. You're hired, I said. But no more spray paint. Over the next week, Lily became my secret weapon. She was a tech whiz, rigging the lasers to pulse in patterns and adding a speaker that played a low hum when the sensors tripped, like a sci-fi force field. Muffin loved it, strutting around the fortress like a king. The neighborhood kids started gathering at the fence, watching the light show with wide eyes, whispering about the cat castle. Even Mr. Delaney stopped by, bringing cookies and stories about his old army buddies. But Karen wasn't done. She escalated her campaign, posting flyers around the neighborhood with Muffin's picture and the words "dangerous animal" in bold. She filed more complaints with the HOA, claiming the fortress was a public nuisance. At the next meeting, she stood up, her voice dripping with fake concern. This structure is lowering property values, and those lasers could blind someone. I stood to respond, my heart racing. The lasers are harmless, and the fortress keeps my cat safe. If anything, it's brought the neighborhood together. Kids love it. People stop by to see it. Maybe you should try talking to your neighbors instead of policing them. The room erupted in murmurs. A few people clapped. Karen's face turned scarlet, but before she could retort, Lily stood up, her voice shaking but clear. Muffin's not dangerous. He's a friend. And Jake's not hurting anyone. You're just mad because you can't control everything. The crowd went silent. Karen looked like she'd been slapped. The HOA president, a tired woman named Susan, sighed. Enough. The fortress stays, as long as it meets safety standards. Next issue. The HOA meeting was a turning point. Karen's defeat should have felt like a victory, but her silence was unnerving. She didn't storm out or shout, she just sat there, her eyes locked on me, cold and calculating. I should have known she wasn't done. Bullies like Karen don't quit, they regroup. And I was about to learn just how far she'd go to win. The next morning, I found a notice taped to my door. It wasn't from the HOA, it was from Animal Control. Karen had filed a formal complaint, claiming Muffin was a stray and a threat to public safety. They were coming to investigate in 2 days. My stomach dropped. Muffin wasn't a stray, had a collar, tags, and a microchip, but I'd heard horror stories about overzealous officers seizing pets on technicalities. I couldn't risk it. I called Lily, who showed up with her laptop and a fierce determination. We're not letting her take Muffin, she said, pulling up local ordinances. Look, cats are allowed to roam as long as they're licensed, which he is. We just need to prove he's not a danger. Karen's not playing by the rules, I said, pacing the living room. Muffin, oblivious, chased a dust bunny under the coffee table. She's got it out for us. We need something bigger than paperwork. Lily's eyes sparkled. Then let's make the fortress untouchable. Let's add a camera to show Muffin's safe and happy. We can live stream it. If the whole town sees how awesome he is, Animal Control won't touch him. It was a long shot, but I was out of options. We spent the day installing a weatherproof webcam, linking it to a YouTube channel called Muffin's Fortress. Lily coded a simple website with the live feed, complete with a chat feature so viewers could comment. By evening, the stream was up, showing Muffin napping in his laser-guarded throne, the lights pulsing softly around him. The neighborhood kids started tuning in, spamming the chat with King Muffin and cat emojis. Even Mr. Thompson watched, posting, "Dang, that's one fancy cat house." Word spread fast. By the next day, the stream had 2,000 views, mostly locals, but a few strangers from out of town. Someone shared it on social media, and soon, Muffin was a minor internet celebrity. The kids in the neighborhood started a Save Muffin campaign, selling bracelets with tiny laser charms to raise money for his legal defense. It was absurd, hilarious, and oddly moving. I'd started this to spite Karen, but it had become something bigger, a rebellion against her petty tyranny, a celebration of community. But Karen wasn't care about viral videos. The night before Animal Control's visit, I caught her snooping around my yard again. I flicked on the floodlights, and there she was, holding a pair of bolt cutters near the fortress's fence. The livestream chat exploded, Karen alert, as viewers watched her freeze like a thief caught red-handed. "Karen," I called out, keeping my voice steady. "Step away from the fortress." She dropped the cutters, her face a mix of fury and embarrassment. "Two was checking for safety violations," she lied, smoothing her sweater. "This thing's a hazard, and I'm documenting it." "You're trespassing," I said, pointing to the camera. "And you're on live TV. Smile for your fans." Her eyes widened, and she glanced at the glowing webcam. "You're insane," she hissed, then fled, her heels sinking into the grass. The stream's chat erupted in cheers, but I felt no triumph. Karen was unraveling, and desperate people do desperate things. The next morning, animal control arrived a woman named Officer Torres, who looked tired but fair. Karen hovered nearby, smirking, flanked by two HOA cronies. I showed Torres Muffin's paperwork, then led her to the fortress, where Muffin was lounging, the lasers deactivated for the visit. The live stream was still running, with thousands watching. "This is unique," Torres said, eyeing the enclosure. "You built this for your cat." "To keep him from scratching trees," I said, glancing at Karen. "Some people don't like him exploring." Karen scoffed. "That cat's a nuisance. He's been terrorizing my yard." "Ma'am," Torres cut in, "I've seen the complaint, but the cat's licensed, vaccinated, and contained. There's no evidence of harm. Unless you have proof of aggressive behavior, there's nothing to pursue here." Karen's face twisted. "But he's dangerous." Torres sighed, already heading for her van. "If you have video or witnesses, file them. Otherwise, this is a civil matter." She left, leaving Karen seething. I should have felt relieved, but Karen's glare told me this wasn't over. And I was right. That afternoon, Mr. Thompson stopped by with news that changed everything. He looked frilier than usual, his hands trembling as he handed me a faded letter. "Jake," he said, his voice low, "I need to tell you about something." About Karen. The letter was from 1965, addressed to a young Daniel Thompson from a girl named Marie. It was a heartbreaking apology, written in looping cursive, explaining why she had to leave town after a mistake they'd made together. Daniel's eyes were wet as he spoke. "Marie was my fiancée," he said. "We were 18, in love, but we were kids. She got pregnant, and her parents sent her away. I never saw her again or our daughter." I frowned, confused. "What's this about to do with Karen?" Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. "Karen's her mother. Marie passed away years ago, but she tracked down Karen down a decade back. She showed up here, angry, wanting to know why I'd abandoned her. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She's been taking it out on the neighborhood ever since, trying to control everything, because she feels like she never had control over her own life." I stared at the letter, my anger at Karen crumbling. She wasn't just a petty bully, she was a woman carrying decades of pain, lashing out at a world that had hurt her before she'd even had a chance to fight back. Muffin, with his carefree chaos, must have felt like a mockery of the order she craved to hold on to. "Does she know about the fortress?" I asked, my voice soft. Daniel nodded slowly. "She's been watching you. She sees you fighting for that cat, and it stirs something in her. I think she's why she's so obsessed." I didn't know what to feel: pity, frustration, or fear. Karen's vendetta wasn't just about a scratched tree. It was a cry for something deeper, something I couldn't see until now. But understanding didn't mean surrender. Muffin was my family, and I'd protect him no matter what. The final act came a week later, in a way I never saw coming. I woke to find the fortress in ruins. The lasers were smashed, the platform splintered, the camera shattered. Muffin was gone. A note was pinned to a fence post, in Karen's handwriting. "He's safe. Meet me at the oak tree by the river at noon." Panic seized me. I called Lily, who hacked into the stream's backup footage. The video showed a hooded figure Karen luring Muffin with treats, then smashing the fort with a crowbar. She'd taken him, but where? The oak tree was a mile away, near a fast-moving current. My heart pounded as I grabbed a flashlight and ran, Lily and Daniel following. We reached the tree to find Karen standing there, holding Muffin in a pet carrier. Her face was raw, streaked with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt him," she choked out. I wanted it to stop." "Karen," I said, stepping forward, "let him go. We can talk." She shook her head, clutching the carrier. "You don't get it. Everyone loves you. Your stupid cat, your stupid little fort. I had no thing, no dad, no family, just a mother who gave me away. And now you're making me the villain." Daniel stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Karen, I'm sorry. I didn't know about you. I'd have been there if I could." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she'd soften. But then she screamed, "It's too late," and hurled the carrier toward the river. Time slowed. I dove, my fingers grazing the handle as it hit the water. The current was too strong, pulling it under. Lily screamed, and Daniel grabbed my arm. But I thrashed free, wading in. The water was freezing, the rocks slick. I lunged, catching the carrier just before it sank. I stumbled back to shore, coughing, and pried it open. Muffin yowled, soaked but alive. Karen collapsed, sobbing. Lily called the police, who arrived minutes later. Karen didn't resist as they led her away. The live stream, still running from the backup, captured it all, the chat filled with shock and prayers. Muffin recovered, but the fortress didn't. I didn't rebuild it not because I couldn't, because it felt wrong. The neighborhood rallied, leaving treats and toys for Muffin, but the spark was gone. Daniel moved to a nursing home, his health failing, haunted by the daughter he'd lost twice. Lily started a coding club, pouring her energy into teaching kids to create, not destroy. And Karen? She pleaded guilty to animal cruelty and property damage, getting probation and therapy. I hoped she'd find peace, but I doubted it. Muffin still roams the yard, but he sticks close now, his eyes older, wiser. I sit with him under the oak tree in our yard, not the one by the river, wondering where it all went wrong. I'd built a fortress to protect him, but maybe I'd been fighting the wrong war. Karen wasn't the enemy, pain was. And pain doesn't lousy, it just waits. The live stream's offline, but the memory lingers. I think about the kids who cheered, the neighbors who laughed, the old man who wired his stories into lasers. We'd built something beautiful, but it cost us. Maybe that's the truth of it. Every fight for love leaves a mark, and not all of them heal. What do you think? Was I right to fight for Muffin, or did I escalate a feud that could have been resolved with words? Was Karen a villain, or just a broken person lashing out? Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear where you stand.